So Mark is asking, how would you approach weight loss? Which is somewhat of an ambiguous question. However, the reason I ask is because I'm currently very inactive due to a couple of injuries, and I really need to lose weight fast, as that is one of the hoops I have to jump through in order to get surgery on my prolapsed disc. And that's from Mark.
Okay, so the first thing to remember is that a calorie isn't a calorie in the sense that we know. It's not to do with weight gain or weight loss, isn't to do with the caloric model. The caloric model is highly flawed. We don't need to be tracking energy in, energy out. We can't track it efficiently. I won't go into the boring details in regards to what a calorie actually is. I'm sure most of you have probably heard us mention and talk about this a number of times. But a lot of my clients are inactive. Some of the biggest loss in weight or fat, I should say, have come from inactive people. It's a common misconception that we need to be active to lose weight. Being active is fantastic. If you can be busy, if you can be active, if you can go to the gym, if you can walk, and you can do all these things, fantastic. But it's not essential. I think it is an important contributing factor, but it's not the be all and end all.
Can I just add something? Because if you look at people that work on building sites and on roads and stuff like that, these people are active, and very rarely do you see someone that looks, fit. Builders, they can be out all day building a wall, and they'll have a big belly. So activity definitely is not the be all and end all. Sorry, Rich. I just want to point that out.
A fantastic point. And another important point to add to that is that, as you guys know, I have recently taken up running and cycling. So I partake now in endurance events. When I attend these events, these are people who are very good runners. They can run long distances incredibly quickly. Almost all of them, bar the elite, 1% of the runners, they all have big bellies. They all have that little muffin top. And they quite often say to me, it doesn't matter how hard I work, how many miles I do, I can't get rid of this, this central adiposity. And the reason for that is that you can't outwork a bad diet. And a bad diet is a diet in which the compounds you consume affect how the body works, particularly the endocrine system. And this is where we lose the fat. This is the key to weight management. Weight management is to do with the endocrine system, i.e. our hormones. It isn't to do with the volume that we eat. But regardless of what lifestyle you live, if you overconsume, you will gain weight. But I'm going to put this into perspective. When I was clinically obese and type 2 diabetic, my daily caloric intake was around 2,700 calories, but predominantly from carbohydrate. I was 17 stone. I'm only 5'9", so that was incredibly big for me. Nearly 60% of my body weight was fat. I could barely walk up the stairs. I suffered with a myriad of conditions, and I was on lots of medication. Now, my daily caloric intake, if we're looking at calories, is anywhere between 4,000 to 6,000. Yet, my body fat percentage is single figures. It may bounce. It bounces between 9 and 11 generally. But I find it incredibly difficult to gain fat, and I like to eat. I eat an awful lot. And the reason for this is that I don't eat foods, I don't consume foods or do things that elicit a high insulin response. And insulin is the key to weight management, because the second we increase insulin upregulates an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase. And this basically, in simple terms, tells the body to store fat. It breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone and it sends the fatty acids into the fat cells. So this is what insulin does. When we elicit an insulin response, we're in fat storage mode. Now, the downside to this is when insulin is elevated, it blocks another enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase. And we need hormone-sensitive lipase to perform this action in reverse and allow us to lose this body fat. I was going to say burn there, but we don't burn fat. That's but in the sense as we understand, I'll use it in that terminology. But we need low insulin to lose body fat. So if we wake up in the morning and we consume a bowl of muesli or porridge or what else would we consume in the morning? Some form of cereal or some bananas, or whatever your go-to is. If it elicits an insulin response, we are immediately in fat storage mode. Now, I've worked with lots of people who begin training when they are attempting a fat loss regime, and they wake up, they'll eat a bowl of cereal, and then they'll go for a run. To which my question always is, well, why have you eaten the cereal? Well, I need energy so I can go on the run to burn fat. Now, the issue with this is the second you've consumed that cereal, because of the carbohydrate and another compound called lectins, is elicited a high insulin response, which has now signaled the body to store body fat, and it's put that biological lock on the fat stores, making it biologically impossible to burn that fat until the insulin has come back down. And then when we get back, we've had a workout, so now we reach for a banana or a piece of toast or a croissant or whatever it is. But again, it's carbohydrate. And quite often these carbohydrates are high in either lectins or they're cooked and baked in things like vegetable oils and seed oils, which also elicit a high insulin response. So the key to weight management is keeping insulin low without having to track calories. And we do this through eating animal proteins and animal fats. Animal proteins, natural proteins and natural fats don't elicit a high insulin response. In fact, fat elicits hardly any response, if any at all. Protein does elicit a response, but it's incredibly small. And the response that the protein does elicit is required for life. We need this much, in simple terms, not this much. And the protein will do this. The protein will allow us that insulin response for us to heal and repair the body. So the key in simple terms for weight management is keeping that insulin low. And we do this through a number of metrics. Now, my biggest piece of advice, if we are to look at levers to pull, the first lever to pull with weight management is the vegetable oils, the seed oils. These seed oils are not designed for human consumption. They are incredibly high in a toxic compound called linoleic acid. Linoleic acid damages the liver and it leads to insulin resistance. This was originally invented as machine lubricant, and it has since found its way into our diet because it was created during, I can't remember if it was World War I or II, I think maybe Steve, you may know, but it was created for one of the world wars in order to I think it was to power ships on the sea and other machine parts. And then this whole industry was created for this oil, which now doesn't exist. Now the war had finished. So then they started putting it into food just to keep that industry alive. This compound is absolutely toxic. It doesn't come from vegetables, it comes from seeds. And in order to extract this oil, these seeds are treated with toxic chemicals like hexane to withdraw the oil. Then they're bleached with things like peroxide, hair dye, known carcinogens, and then we cook our food in this. You can run your diesel car on vegetable oil, but would you cook your food in diesel is the question, and the answer to that is no. Many of us within the community understand this already. But I believe the question has come from somebody new to the group. So, this is why I'm going into a little bit of detail. These vegetable oils, these seed oils are found in everything. Almost every packet that you pick up in the supermarket contains some form of vegetable oil. It'll either say vegetable oil or it will say sunflower oil, safflower oil, rapeseed, grapeseed, canola, so on and so forth. These oils are toxic and they will elicit more insulin, or they'll damage the body and lead to a higher insulin response than even carbohydrate will. So that's my rule number one. Remove the vegetable oils. All processed foods are cooked in vegetable oils. If you go to any fast food restaurant, they are using vegetable oils. So this is, another thing that we need to gravitate away from. If we eat out, we need to explain to the restaurant that we have an allergy to these vegetable oils. Can they kindly not use them or cook in butter? You can mention tallow, lard and ghee, but they're not going to stock them unless they're an Indian restaurant. But most places will have butter. So they will either dry fry, pan fry, without the oil, or they'll cook in butter for you. But it's this conscious effort to keep these oils away. And then the second contributing factor are grains, because grains contain a compound called wheat germ agglutinin. Wheat germ agglutinin binds to the insulin receptor and it signals the body to elicit a 5 times higher response. To put this into perspective, if you had a bowl of muesli that contained 500 calories, bacon and eggs that contained 500 calories, the muesli is going to elicit a 5 times higher response and lead to 5 times higher, potentially higher in fat storage. So we need to remove the grain. So that's number 2. Carbs would come further down the line. Carbs for me would come either 3 or 4th down the line. So seed oils are the biggest lever that we can pull. The grains, so even if you were still consuming carb, if you were consuming carb from a healthier source like white rice, which is lectin free, then this is going to cause less damage. And then deeper down the line comes that restriction in carbohydrate. But when you understand that it's this insulin response that is leading to this fat gain, then we can gravitate through the foods that we consume on a daily basis, gravitate more towards our animal proteins, consume the animal proteins that come in nature with animal fats, and then our insulin response is a lot lower, and we lose this weight hand over fist without generally, and there are exceptions to this, I understand quite early on, many of us within the group have gone through an inflammatory response, a healing response in which we've gained a little bit of weight, but that's also perfectly normal. But generally, we lose this weight without having to track or count anything. And then it leads us further down this path of eating intuitively, eating when we're hungry, not eating just because we're meant to, because we're told it's a mealtime. Eat when we're hungry. If we're not hungry, we don't eat. And this leads generally to a significant loss if we have it to lose. And then deeper down the journey, there are other levers that we can pull. How was that, Steve?
Well, I think you need to go in more detail. No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. That's okay. Just to tell people, you can put your hand up. You can use the things down the bottom of the screen to put your hand up to ask a question. But we're dealing with questions that people have put online. Rudy has asked a question. How do people here feel about casomorphine? As far as I know, most research considers it harmless, with most people stating there is no significant dopamine bump, nor sufficient quantity to lead to addictive behaviours. I'm mainly wondering because after yesterday I had a lot of cheese. I was actually hungry this morning, with a larger quantity of cheese having been the only major difference. So I think we could broaden it out, not just cheese, but maybe dairy and casomorphines. What's your views?
Yeah, so casomorphine is highly addictive. It can also lead to constipation. Cheese is a big contributor to casomorphines. Do I think there's something to worry about? Look, for me, and we are all individuals, so let's break it down. Casomorphine can also cause intestinal permeability, or casein can at least. Casein can cause the release of a molecule called zonulin in the gut, which leads to holes lining the gut. When zonulin is released, it causes a gap to appear in the tight junction between the epithelial cells, which can lead to autoimmune disease. Wheat germ agglutinin is one of the biggest contributing factors to this. Alcohol can also cause this. Casein can cause it, but casein causes it far less than wheat germ agglutinin, far less. And generally, if you are in the society of being keto, low carb, or carnivore, our guts are generally healthy enough for this not to happen. It could be something to remove potentially if you are suffering with severe autoimmune issues. But cheese works really well for me. It is highly addictive, and when I eat it, I eat an awful lot. But cheese does work really well. Cheese is a good source of protein, and it's a good source of natural fats. It's an ideal snack for me. It doesn't cause me any problems, but I'm 10, 11 years down my journey in regards to being ketogenic and carnivore. But yes, it is highly addictive. It does release that morphine-like substance, which does cause addiction. It's been known to block the prefrontal cortex in the same way the sugar does. And sugar, when it does block the prefrontal cortex, it inhibits our ability to make sensible choices. This is the reason that we may get up at 2 a.m. in the morning and drive to the petrol station, the garage for a chocolate bar, or McDonald's or Burger King as it was in my day. But yes, it is highly addictive. Is it a problem? It's only a problem if it causes an issue. And for many of us living, this type of lifestyle, I think there are far bigger levers to pull. Cheese, to me, I don't even consider to be dairy, and I know that may shock lots of people. Casein from milk causes lots of issues. Casein from milk also contains, or the milk itself contains lactose, which also causes problems. milk is something that I think we should only consume at birth, and it should be mother's breast milk. We shouldn't be consuming milk from another animal, and we certainly shouldn't be consuming milk past the age of infancy. But milk is designed to aid new birth in the same way that eggs are, really. So eggs and milk are the only things in nature that come with protein, fat, and carbohydrate all mixed together. And it's designed in order to elicit, the IGF-1 and the mTOR response in order to for us to heal and grow and repair and build from birth. But beyond that, we don't need it. And I don't think that anybody should be consuming milk. Even A2 still can cause intestinal permeability. And we know this from studies that are done on the Maasai in regards to intestinal permeability compared to the Maasai and the Akikuyu, who are a neighbouring tribe. They are essentially the same people. One is a vegan tribe and the Maasai are carnivore. And during metrics that were tested on both tribes, the Maasai outperformed on every metric. They were taller, they had more muscle mass, better bone mineral density. They were stronger, fitter, healthier. They lived longer. But there was one metric that the Akikuyu was better on, and that was intestinal permeability, because the Maasai was still drinking lots of milk, A2 milk from their cattle. I think we had Podrick on a podcast once, didn't we, Stephen, and who was an avid user of raw dairy, and he admitted himself that it became really addictive. And now he just uses it as a treat once a month, which is perfectly fine. But again, if any of you are consuming A2 dairy, I'm not against it. I just think that people should be aware that it can still cause intestinal permeability. But in short, morphine is highly addictive, but it works incredibly well for me, and I find that it does so more with most people, even people who suffer with lactose intolerance. Real cheese doesn't seem to elicit any immediate effect. I think it's a fantastic tool if you can cope with it in your body.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I mean, I find dairy is problematic with a lot of people that I coach. When I say a lot, let's a small enough minority for it to be a subject that we need to talk about. So, yeah, I think dairy can be problematic. You can have a lot of weight loss stalls with dairy. But anyway, let's have a look at the next thing, which is, well, we have a question online, but Selena's come in and she's asked something, and I'm really intrigued to know what actually this is about. So Selena's saying, sorry, I'm a bit late joining. Have I missed the keto stick not changing explanation? Do you know what that is?
Right. There was a question in the group from a few weeks ago in regards to the colour change. Yes. Was it Joe? Was it your question? Yeah. Brilliant. So look, the urine strips pick up on a wasted ketone body. When we first become ketogenic or carnivore or carb restrict and the body produces ketones, it creates 3 ketone bodies, 2 predominantly over the third, acetone and acetoacetate. These are ketones that we waste in our breath, which is where people will quite often say that they're suffering with a bad breath issue, or they get a metallic taste in their mouth. This is the acetone. Now, these things are perfectly normal and they do pass, but these are wasted ketone products. So when we begin a ketogenic, low-carb carnivore journey and we start to test on the urine strips, they'll start to change colour from a light purple or pink all the way up to an incredibly dark purple. And it's fantastic. When you start your journey and you pee on this strip and it starts to change colour, it gives you that incentive and it's brilliant. It's a fantastic feeling. And it's highly addictive. I used to use them all day. Every time I was going to the toilet, I was using these urine strips, and I was monitoring how my strip was changing colour throughout the day. In the morning, it'd be incredibly low, if nothing at all, and there is a reason for this also. After a meal, I'd found that it was incredibly low, and there's also a reason for that. And after training, it was incredibly low. The best time that I found for my result was just before bed. But as I persevered down my journey, you tend to become more strict, and everything's working. You're losing this weight. This mental clarity is clearing up. You're benefiting from all these fantastic things, and then your urine strip starts to become lighter, and you think, "Oh my God, what am I doing wrong? I haven't changed anything." And then you start going back to the drawing board and you start pulling your hair out, and then you start fasting for silly amounts of time, and you start questioning everything that you're doing, and it spins your brain out and it becomes really confusing. And then you think, I'm doing all of these things and I'm not even ketogenic anymore. I might as well just throw the towel in. The fact is that when that strip becomes lighter, you are becoming more adaptive. Now the body's no longer wasting as many of these ketones because your body's preferencing beta-hydroxybutyrate. As the strip becomes lighter, you are becoming more adapted. So if we look at adaptation, there's a few things that get thrown around, a few terms. Fat adaptation and becoming keto adapted. Now, fat adaptation this occurs really quickly because we have the ability to metabolize fat, to create ketones. So fat adaptation begins incredibly quickly. But keto adaptation, which is where the body utilizes beta-hydroxybutyrate, takes a lot longer. And this can take 3, 6 months or even 12 months. But it's important to remember when this starts to happen that this is a good thing. When your strips become lighter, it means your body's adapting and you're no longer wasting these ketones. Now your body's thriving on beta-hydroxybutyrate. And this is where all the magic happens, even though it doesn't feel like. In some cases it does. And for me it did. But for many, it can become a case of that we forget how far that we've come. And I'll give you an example. I was talking to a client yesterday who, and Stephen's mentioned this lots of times, they got to a stage in which they came to me with, say, 10 problems, 9 of which had all gone away. And there was one thing that they wanted, this lifestyle to cure, if you like, and it wasn't happening. So they threw the towel in and went back on eating carbs and then suffered with all the problems again. Instead of looking at all the positives, they were drawn negatively to this one thing that they hadn't achieved. And that's important to remember. And sometimes when we have what we call a cheat day, I tend to call them targeted refeeds or mental resets, because I don't think that we should be super restrictive all the time. I think it's important to, fall off the wagon, if you want to throw it that way. But, we don't fall off the wagon. I think we should give ourselves time to enjoy the things that maybe we are missing. If, your daughter bakes you a cake, or it's a wedding, or someone's bought you something, we shouldn't feel that we are living this super strict lifestyle in which we can't indulge with a piece of chocolate or a piece of cake now and then, because this is all about the rule and not the exception. Yes, giving up these things initially for us to adapt is fantastic, and the more that we give these things up initially, and the longer we give it, the quicker we adapt, the more we can reap the benefits. But the beauty of being keto adapted is we can put these compounds back in. I love eating chocolate, and now and again I'll indulge in a little bit of chocolate. I'm aware of what that compound contains, and the damage that chocolate can cause, and I'm happy to accept that. But understanding, that we don't have to be 100% restrictive constantly. Allows us, or gives us the ability to become even more strict in some sense, because now we have just indulged with a takeaway, for example, or we've gone away on holiday and we've let our hair down, and now we think we've ruined everything. I'm going to throw the towel in. What's the point? I've come off the wagon for 3 days. Again, this is all about the rule and not the exception. When you do indulge, you quite often feel pretty poorly. All of these things, you get gut issues, you feel the bloating, you get gastro distress, maybe you get toilet problems, you feel the aches and pains come back, you feel lethargic, you get headaches. And that's fantastic, because now your body is telling you that it doesn't like these compounds. It's almost like an early warning system. And it's the same system that we get when we start to drink alcohol. When we first begin to drink alcohol, it takes a little bit to get us tipsy and drunk, and then the next time we drink, it's twice as much, and then before we know it, we can go on a full night out, spend an absolute fortune, be in bed all day the next day, feeling really sorry for ourselves, but we didn't feel that bad as we were building up to it, and then we go and do it again the next week. It doesn't mean that damage isn't being caused. It just means that we have lost the ability to recognize that our bodies don't like these compounds. Now that you've come away from consuming these compounds, when you put them back in, these early warning alarm systems have all been enhanced again. We get these exaggerated responses. The second we put a compound in the body doesn't like, it tells us, and that's fantastic. This is a good thing. It's not that we've become intolerant to these compounds. Now our body's telling us, I don't want that crap. I'm processing it for you now, but don't put it in again tomorrow, for example. But that doesn't mean that you can't eat those compounds. But coming back to the original thing, and I've probably gone a little bit off topic with this, but when your ketone strips become a lot lighter, it means you've become adapted. And it's a fantastic thing. And now your requirement for the strips is no longer needed. I don't use strips anymore. I show negative on the urine strips. I haven't shown on a urine strip since I can remember. My ketones are so low that I show less than 0.5 on a blood monitor. And the blood monitor is measuring blood ketones. And the reason for this is my body is so adaptive that it doesn't even have excess amount in the blood because it's using it at such a high rate. So even on a blood monitor, the amount of ketones in my blood sometimes show negative. Yet, I'm a fat burner. My body is thriving on ketones constantly. It's just because I've become more efficient. So this is the reason that the strips become less. And there's also a reason, and I will tie this up quickly, apologies. When we eat food, we shouldn't test any form of testing after because the body increases melanin coenzyme A, and this blocks the pathways. It blocks carnitine palmitols, or CPT1. It blocks the body's ability to send the fat through the carnitine palmitol transferase transporter, which leads to beta oxidation. Therefore, we're no longer creating ketones because we've eaten. After training, that causes what's called peripheral insulin resistance. Training does, and it does it through a number of mechanisms, but cortisol and adrenaline are some of those mechanisms. So we shouldn't test after training yet. When you train, even if you're training in zone 2, like a low intensity, and you think that you're burning more fat, you are actually creating less ketones during that time because of that stress response. So don't test. Don't test in the morning. Don't test after eating. Don't test after training. Leave a few hours after all of those. And if you are testing, test just before bed is probably the best time to test your ketones. But when you're not showing any, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Cool. Yeah, so I missed the beginning. Could you go through that again? No joke. So, Mark, this is online. Is being type 2 diabetic a problem when you go keto or carnivore? I just don't trust the media and the food industry, but I keep getting grief for my diet because low carb and even carnivore is frowned upon by doctors and dietitians. Right. Can I just put my 2 pence in there?
By the way.
Right. Now, people have replied. There are literally maybe 500 people I've seen in the last 10 years that have reversed their diabetes. They don't need their medications. That's a fact. Objective reality. Richard's just put his hand up. Sarah, who he works with, they're idiots. I'm going to be really blunt. I'm sorry. But if they think a disease which is caused by high levels of insulin is not going to be helped by taking out the one macronutrient that raises your insulin, they're idiots. Really is that. I'm sorry to be blunt, but it's got to the point where I just can't believe that we're still getting pushed back because low carb is so obviously the way to go. Carnivore even better because it's even lower carb. And keto, that's very low carb. And when I did my training, and I'm a specialist practitioner in obesity and diabetes, when I did my training, because I didn't come from a medical background, I just listened to the tutor and I would ask common sense questions. And they kept saying, right, to increase the medication, we increase the insulin, we look at how much carbohydrate has been put into the system. So they weren't even talking about people like they're people. They're talking them like they're a unit. How much carbohydrate has been put into the system, then we adjust the dosage in accordance. So if there's more carbohydrate going in, then you're going to need a bigger dosage. And I just put my hand up and said, well, why don't we just lower the dosage of carbohydrate? Then we can have lower levels of medication. And literally they laughed at it. They're just idiots. Sorry. It's so obvious to me. It's so obvious because when you take the carbohydrates out, the problems improve, and if you put them back in, they come back and get worse again. So there you go. You don't need a study. You don't need to do anything other than just look at what's happening to real people in the hundreds and thousands around the world. And people like Ken Berry are fed up with it. The American Diabetic Association, he's setting up a alternative, because last week or the week before, one of the people that worked at the American Diabetic Association quit because they wanted her to recommend some of these recipes that had Splenda in. And she said, I don't think Splenda is very good for diabetics. Well, that's the facts. But unfortunately, the ADA, the American Diabetic Association, gets funded by one of many people, but Splenda. So Splenda, who pay for this website, wanted these recipes with their product in to be pushed. And rather than the American Diabetic Association saying, this isn't good for diabetics, they went, this is really good for us as an association. We'll take the money and we'll do that. Well, but somebody actually had the tenacity to say, this is wrong. And instead of them listening, they fired her. So that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with profit, people wanting to sell you pharmaceuticals, keeping you sick, because a healthy patient is not one that's going to make them any money. It's really that simple. Really is that simple. So anyway, Mark, somebody has kindly put lots of podcasts and links to success stories there for you to look at, but I can categorically say it is not a problem to be this way of eating if you're type 2 diabetic. Sorry, Rich, but it definitely made me a bit cross.
Yep, spot on. And 100% correct. It's diabetes is an issue with insulin, and we've got two different types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 have the inability to create insulin in the first place, so they'll always require insulin. But even in the case of a type 1 diabetic, if you consume lower amounts of carbohydrate, then your requirement for insulin also becomes lower. I used to be type 2. I used to be clinically obese. Suffered with lots of health conditions, as many of you know, severe anxiety, depression, acne, arthritic pains, daily debilitating migraines. I could barely walk up the stairs in my mid to late 20s without stopping or being severely out of breath. And it's through living this lifestyle, I have reversed my diabetes. I've reversed the reversal of diabetes with the clients I've worked with is 100% in the clients that have stuck to the advice that I have given. And in the ones that haven't stuck, they've still seen a massive improvement. Diabetes is a case of insulin resistance. Basically, insulin is increased or continues to increase for years and years and years until the pancreas can no longer increase the amount required to drive or pull that glucose out of the blood, because glucose is a toxin. Sugar in the bloodstream is a toxin and it will kill us. This is why we need insulin to pull it out from the blood, to send into the cells and to store in the muscle as glycogen in order to save your life. And that is a fact. Sugar is a drug, and it's a toxin to the body. So when we become insulin resistant, and we see this as a curve, one of the graphics or videos that Stephen has shown a number of times, insulin resistance increases over time to the point that insulin can no longer be increased. But this diabetes began 10 to 15 years prior, and it could have been nipped in the bud, because we don't see it prior to this, because the doctor is testing blood glucose. So the doctor's testing your blood glucose levels. You may be in a normal range, and you only become pre-diabetic when insulin can no longer be upregulated. But if we were to test insulin, we can see this elevation of insulin occurring 10 to 15 years before diabetes and pre-diabetes is even recognized. So if it's an insulin issue, what do we need to avoid? Well, the compounds that cause this insulin response, and it's also the same compounds that cause us to gain weight, surprisingly enough. And they are carbohydrate, excessive amounts of carbohydrate, and these vegetable oils. So what doesn't elicit this response? Well, it's eaten this way. Animal proteins and animal fats. This is why living a low-carb, ketogenic, or carnivore-based lifestyle will see a massive improvement, if not complete resolution, in a type 2 diabetic. And again, coming back to a point that we made on the live yesterday, animal proteins contain every vitamin and mineral that we need, not just to survive, but thrive. Vegetables, and I'm not putting anybody off vegetables. I support, I work with vegans, vegetarians, people who still consume lots of vegetables. But there's nothing of any nutritional value in any vegetable that you cannot get from an animal protein. I won't bore you with that now, but it is available on the live yesterday with an infographic that we went into, and we showed how devoid that some of the world's most apparent nutrient vegetables are in real life. They're incredibly devoid in A vitamins, B vitamins. They don't contain any D. Very little in choline in most, no creatine, carnosine, and so on and so forth. And yes, plants do not contain vitamin E. So this is one of the main reasons that we're told to consume plants in general is for retinol or vitamin E. But plants don't contain retinol. They contain a compound called beta-carotene, which is not retinol. It's a precursor. But if we live this lifestyle, consume animal proteins and natural fats, then we will see an improvement in insulin almost overnight. So if you were to begin the journey today and we were to measure insulin, we will see a drop by tomorrow, the next day a further drop, and it continues. Where are we over there? My camera's the other way around. We will continue to see this drop for weeks and weeks and weeks, to the point where a type 2 diabetic by blood glucose could technically reverse their diabetes in as little as 2 weeks. And there is a video that I've published on YouTube many years ago with one of the clients that I worked with who did in fact do this, reverse their diabetes technically by a blood glucose test in as little as 2 weeks. This Mark, you need to send all of these people who are concerned to our channel so we can re-educate them in the world of real nutrition.
Excellent. Rich, I think we'll wrap up there. There's no questions. No one's got their hands up. I think we did the online questions, which is really good. Did you want to ask the people about membership of this fine community?
Yes, in fact, I've got 2 questions. I've got a number of... Any of you guys who are on the live today, I don't know if you buy my electrolytes. If you do, then I've got a proposition for you. If you would be kind enough to buy 1 tub from Amazon so you can leave me a positive review, I will refund you for your order. Basically, you get a free tub of electrolytes. I know some of you guys are, in Canada, Susan being one of them, on the other side of the world, in which you're unable to do so. But if you do like the electrolytes, I've had a lot of bad feedback on them because people are incredibly silly. So if you are a user of the electrolytes and you would like to have a free tub, order one online from Amazon for me. Leave a nice review. Maybe look at what the other people are saying, which are negative in regards to the pinhole in the top, which has to be there. The color of the powder, which is that's the color of astaxanthin. There's no artificials added to my electrolytes. That's the color of astaxanthin, and it's also what gives it the fishy taste. But yeah, that's out there. If any of you guys want to do that, I will refund that order for you. Also, Stephen and I, as you know, have this low carb school. We are looking to grow it. We're looking to add more bits in order to re-educate. And we were looking at running maybe a course or series of courses. And we were wondering what your guys' thoughts would be on this. So I don't know if you want to leave your thoughts on it now, but we were thinking of running maybe courses in which we teach you in depth in regards to health and well-being, and part some of the knowledge that Stephen and I have learned over the years. And it would be a graded type of course in which you'd have to sit an exam at the end of it and get a certification from us, if you like, which in the big wide world doesn't mean anything at all. But many of you have asked me recently if there's any courses out there in which they can subscribe to learn more and in depth about specific subjects where we can really get into the minutiae and you can learn and sit that course as a test. Again, the qualification from us wouldn't be worth anything in the big bad world. But it is something that we were thinking of putting together, and we wanted to know if that would be of interest to any of you guys. So your feedback would be massively appreciated. And thumbs up from Susan. Brilliant. Joe, brilliant. So there we are. I don't know if you guys want to leave a comment or whether you want to jump on it now. But what do you want to do, Steve? Leave comments in the group, maybe?
Well, I can see the comments there. Alison, oh, yes, would love the course. Selena, yes, love a bit of lifelong learning. Lydia says, yes, defo. I don't know if she's talking to me. No, yes, as in definite. Susan says, good idea. Just going back to the Amazon thing, Matthew's saying, thank you, that's very kind. Thank you, Richard. And I get what Selena's saying. She says, I like the unflavoured electrolytes, happy to buy more, but I don't like buying from Amazon. Yes, I'm 100% behind that. but it would help Richard because of one of the reasons we don't like Amazon is because their system is not great. So yes, it would help him. You're not going to be out of pocket, and it's going to help Richard because sadly he has to sell via Amazon, as do I. I mean, my books are on Amazon. I don't like Amazon, but the only way to get them out there is on Amazon. So yeah.
It's Amazon they take an awful big percentage, which doesn't leave very much for Stephen and I in regards to the things that we sell on there. But as a brand awareness exercise, it does get the brand out there. We do sell an awful lot on Amazon, and we would prefer you guys to buy direct from the website, but purely for brand awareness on Amazon and to help us grow the brand there. If any of you wanted to do that, that would be massively appreciated. Just drop me a message, when you've done so, and I will send you some bucks via bank transfer or sort you out with some of the freebies, whatever you want. But any help would be massively appreciated.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Your support means the absolute world to me, and if you're enjoying this show, I've got a small favour to ask you. I'd be incredibly grateful if you would consider becoming a supporter and make a small monthly donation. Your contribution will really help to improve the show. I'll be able to improve the software, maybe put a few more episodes out, and do many things that I'm hoping to do in the future. Do them a lot quicker. So, it's a small monthly contribution. You can cancel at any time, and the link is in the show notes. Thanks very much for listening.